Tathagata. The Lankavatara Sutra being one of the principal Mahayana texts treating of the inner truth realized by the Tathagata. Pratyatma vedya gati dham mh tathagatanam. It behoves us to have some knowledge of the Tathagata himself, as far as it is given us in the Sutra. In fact, we already know something of him when we have investigated what this inner truth is, for it constitutes the very essence of Tathagatahood, who would not be himself if he had it not. Not only that, his whole life is regarded as to be given up to the propagation of Pratyatma Dharma. The identification of the Tathagata with Pratyatma Dharma does not require any specific proofs, as this, indeed, composes the contents of the Lankavatara itself. But the Pratyatma Dharma alone of itself does not make up the whole being of the Tathagata, who requires something more to move among the ignorant and conference used, and who desires to lead all beings up to the same elevation where he himself is. The realm where he moves along with his inner revelations is, indeed, beyond that of the philosophers and the sravakas and pratyekabuddhas, as we are repeatedly reminded in the Lankavatara. But this self-enjoyment of the blissful samadhi is not what we expect of the Tathagata. He must show something more, he must be more than himself, go beyond his inner revelations. This means that he must be a personality. As was elsewhere noted, a great compassionate heart is to be awakened in the wise men who have seen yathabhutam into the inner truth of things, for this is what makes all great souls really living. To be a person means, among other things, to be a living being, to have a feeling heart, to live among the ignorant and confused, and not to remain isolated in his own intellectual transcendentalism. So all the Tathagatas of the past, present, and future must be endowed with this affection for the world. The supreme wisdom by which they are able to realize in themselves the inner truth of things must not be merely intellectual. There must be an element of affection. This is, indeed, what distinguishes the Mahayana from the Hinayana. The reason why the Lankavatara is persistent in dwelling upon the mental attitude of the Tathagata toward the world as in such contrast with that of the sravakas and the pratyekabuddhas and also the philosophers is that the Tathagata comprises this tenderness for others in spite of his enlightenment, which transcends the categories of being and non-being, of coming into existence and passing out of it. The supreme wisdom then distinguishes itself by three marks. The first is the nirabhasa, meaning, free from all false appearances, beyond semblance, shadowless, or imageless. The second is the Buddha, own will and power. And the third is the realization of the inner truth. When these three aspects or characteristics of supreme wisdom are in perfect combination and operate harmoniously, a bodhisattva is said to draw near Buddhahood. So we can say that supreme wisdom, which is the essence of Tathagatahood, is composed of the will of the Tathagata plus this non-dualistic understanding. Ayajnana is prajna supported by pralnadhana, that is, by the 10 inexhaustible vows, while the unsupported prajna is designated as a lame donkey. When this place of Buddhist teaching is comprehended, we have mastered more than half of its secrets. What is the meaning of Tathagata? This has been much discussed by scholars, but so far nothing conclusive has been reached. Tatha means, thus, but the question is whether to divide Tathagata into Tatha and Gata, or into Tatha and Agata. In the first case, Gata is gone, or departed, and in the second case, if it is Agata, it means is come, or is arrived. The Chinese translators have adopted the second reading as they have rendered Tathagata by, but the Tibetans have for it. In point of fact, it does not matter whether the Tathagata is the one thus come, or the one thus gone. When his appearance in the world is made the center of interest, he is the one who has thus come. On the other hand, if we think more of his disappearance from among us, he is the one who has thus departed. The main question, however, with the Mahayanists is this: why is he designated thus? What does this thus mean? This is what we wish to know. There is no doubt the Tatha is connected with the Mahayana conception of the ultimate truth as tathagata, and also with the idea of seeing into the nature of things yathabhutam. When the tathagatas coming into existence and his passing away from it is considered from the yathabhutam point of view, that is, as neither coming nor departing, as not subject to the category of being and non-being, his being and his doings may well be characterized as having the quality of thusness. There is no other good way of describing them. Hence the appellation, the one who has the nature of thusness in his coming and going, that is, the Tathagata. In the Diamond Sutra we have, "But if, O Subhuti, there is a man who would say, the Tathagata goes, he comes, he stands, he sits, or he lies, that man understands not the meaning of what I say." Why? Because the Tathagata is he who goes nowhere and who comes from nowhere. Therefore, he is called the Tathagata, Arhat, fully enlightened one. Single quote. The interpretation of Tathagata as the thusness of things is given in the Ashtasahasrika Prajnaparamita Sutra in a most characteristic manner as follows. At that time the Venerable Subhuti spoke to the Blessed One thus: "This truth is preached by thee, that all things are beyond the grasp of the understanding. This truth knows no obstruction whatever. There are no signs of obstruction in it. Being like space, no traces are left in it. It allows no similitude because of its having no companionship. It has no equal because of its standing above all opponents. It leaves no footsteps because of its never having assumed itself. It has never been born because of its being above birth and death. It has no tracks to follow because of no tracks ever being traced here. It allows of no idle speculation because of its having nothing to do with words and discrimination." The Blessed One said to Subhuti, "So it is, just as you say." Sakra, chief of the gods, Brahman, lord of the world, and the gods belonging to the world of desire and that of form, said to the Blessed One, "Subhuti, the noble sravaka and the elder, is truly the one who is born after the Buddha." Why? Because the truth which he declares indeed in accordance with the doctrine of emptiness. Then the Venerable Subhuti said to Sakra and the other gods, "As to what the gods say about Subhuti the elder, being born after the Buddha, he is indeed such because of his having never been born. Subhuti the elder is born after the thusness or suchness of the Tathagata, that is, one who is thus come. As the Tathagata's thusness neither comes nor passes away, so does Subhuti's thusness neither come nor pass away. So, indeed, Subhuti's thusness neither comes nor passes away. So, indeed, is Subhuti the elder born after the Tathagata in accordance with the thusness of the Tathagata. Indeed, from the first is Subhuti born after the Tathagata in accordance with the thusness of the Tathagata. Why? What is the thusness of the Tathagata that is the thusness of all things? And what is the thusness of the Tathagata as well as the thusness of all things, that is the thusness of Subhuti the elder? Subhuti the elder is born after this thusness, therefore he is the one who is born after the Tathagata. And this thusness is no thusness, and after this thusness is Subhuti born. So indeed is Subhuti the elder the one who is born after the Tathagata. What the Tathagata's permanency is, that is the permanency of thusness, and by this permanency Subhuti, the elder, is the one who is born after the Tathagata. As the Tathagata's thusness is changeless, free from change, not discriminating, free from discrimination, so is indeed Subhuti, thusness changeless, free from change, not discriminating, free from discrimination. So indeed Subhuti the elder, who is by this thusness changeless, free from change, not discriminating, free from discrimination, is the one born after the Tathagata. And as the Tathagata's thusness is changeless, free from change, not discriminating, free from discrimination, nowhere obstructed, so is the thusness of all things changeless, free from change, not discriminating, free from discrimination, and is nowhere obstructed. Why? What is the Tathagata's thusness and what is the thusness of all things? That is just one thusness. This thusness is not two, is not a duality, it is not a twofold thusness. This thusness is nowhere, is from nowhere, and belongs to nobody. As this thusness belongs to nobody, so it is not two, it is not a duality, it is not a twofold thusness. Even so is Subhuti the elder born after the Tathagata's uncreated thusness. What is uncreated thusness? That is in no time no thusness. Since it is thusness that is not thusness in no time, this thusness is not two, is not a duality, is not a twofold thusness. So indeed is Subhuti the elder born after the Tathagata. As the Tathagata's thusness is everywhere in all things without discrimination, free from discrimination, even so is the thusness of Subhuti everywhere in all things without discrimination, free from discrimination. So is Subhuti transformed by the thusness of the Tathagata, and yet there is no splitting into duality, it is not split into two, splitting is not obtainable. So indeed is Subhuti the elder's thusness not different from the thusness of all things. What is not different from the thusness of all things? That is nowhere not thusness, it is just that thusness, the thusness of all things. It is admitted that Subhuti the elder in accordance with the same thusness follows that thusness, it is not admitted that his following is somewhere, somehow. So indeed is Subhuti the elder born after the Tathagata. As the Tathagata's thusness belongs neither to the past, nor to the future, nor to the present, so indeed does the thusness of all things not belong to the past, nor to the future, nor to the present. Just so is Subhuti the elder born after this thusness, he is said to be born after the Tathagata. Following thusness indeed by the thusness of the Tathagata, he follows thusness of the past by the thusness of the Tathagata. He follows the Tathagata's thusness by thusness of the past. By the Tathagata's thusness he follows thusness of the future. By thusness of the future he follows the Tathagata's thusness. By the Tathagata's thusness he follows thusness of the present. By thusness of the present he follows the Tathagata's thusness. By the Tathagata's thusness he follows thusness of the past, future, and present. By thusness of the past, future, and present, he follows the Tathagata's thusness. Thus indeed Subhuti's thusness and thusness of the past, future, and present, and the Tathagata's thusness, the thusness indeed is not two, it is not a duality. So the thusness of all things, and Subhuti's thusness is not two, it is not a duality. What is the thusness of the Blessed One and of one who is becoming a bodhisattva? That is the thusness of the Blessed One who is fully awakened in the highest perfect enlightenment. This thusness by which the bodhisattva Mahasattva is fully awakened in the highest perfect enlightenment is designated by the name of Tathagata. Now when this discourse on the thusness of the Tathagata was going on, the great earth shook in 6 different ways with 18 great signs. Is swayed, trembled, rattled, wreathed, thundered, just as it did at the time when the Tathagata was awakened to the highest perfect enlightenment. One of the ways of determining the conception of the Tathagata is to know what are the essential constituents of bodhisattvaship. Not only after his attainment of an ideal Buddhist life, but while he is perfecting himself for such life. A bodhisattva is a sentient being whose inherent possession is body, or who is disciplining himself for the realization of body or enlightenment. He is thus far from being a Tathagata, but the difference is that between potentiality and actuality, that is, between one who is to be and one who is. When we know what the one is aiming at, we can guess what the other is after arriving at the goal. What are the constituents of bodhisattvahood? What are the essential qualities of the bodhisattva? According to the Lankavatara, he is the one who endeavors 2. Thereby to liberate himself from the conditions of discrimination, and 2. Rise above the net of phraseology woven by erroneous imagination. 3. And further to realize that an external world so-called of particulars is no more and the construction of the Alayavijnana. 4. To attain a mental attitude by which he views nirvana and samsara as 2 aspects of one and the same fact. 5. To be furnished with great compassionate heart and skillful means. 6. To perform effortless deeds, to walk the road of formlessness, to enter upon a mental state of non-semblance. 7. To attain the perfection of samadhi in which things are viewed as above all forms of perturbation and as unborn. 8. To be in the perfection of prajna, whereby to live always in the thusness of things. 9. To manifest finally the Buddha boy which, now being endowed with the 10 powers, the 6 psychic faculties, and the tenfold self-mastery, is able to assume any form at will to visit all the Buddha lands, and to lead all beings to the perception of the truth of the mind only. When these are achieved, a bodhisattva or in fact any being is regarded as having reached Tathagatahood. Aside from the question, what the Buddha body or the Tathagata body really is, this has partly been discussed in the previous chapter entitled, The Trikaya. We may mention that the full attainment of this body takes place in the Akanishtha heaven, which is the highest of the Rupadhatu. According to this, as long as we are staying in this world of desire where we mortals are not able to escape the bondage of coarser matter, we cannot attain to the perfection of the Tathagatagata, which is evidently a kind of spiritual body able to take on any form as desired either by oneself or by others. Hence the conception of the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya. The treatment of the Tathagata in the Lankavatara may be divided under 2 heads. The Tathagata as he is, and the Tathagata in his relation to sentient beings. As to the first head much has already been said. And in fact, the previous chapter on the relation of Zen Buddhism to the Lankavatara may be regarded in a way as an exposition of the inner consciousness of the Tathagata. The following quotations, which are concerned with the essence of Tathagatahood, are more or less repetitions confirming the views already expounded. The essence of enlightenment goes beyond all logical measurement and the senses. It is neither effect nor cause. It is not intellective, nor is it to be reached by reason. It is not qualifying, nor is it to be qualified. The skandhas, causation, and enlightenment, these are not seen by anybody anywhere. How can anyone anywhere make any assertion or discrimination about that which is not seen? It is not something made, nor something unmade. It is not an effect nor a cause. It is not the skandhas, nor no skandhas. Nor is it any other composition. It is not to be discriminated as something existing. It is not so seen. This something unseen is not to be known as nothing, for it is that which constitutes the essence of all things. Something first in being, and there is non-being. Nothing yet in being, and there is being. Therefore, non-being is not to be attained, and being is not to be discriminated. Those who do not comprehend what is ego and what is non-ego, get themselves attached to words only. They drown themselves in dualism. They are ruined themselves and ruin the ignorant. When they see my doctrine which is liberated from all error, they see truthfully, they do not harm the leader. Single quote. When Mahamati asked what constituted tathagatahood, the Buddha answered, "They are tathagatas and Buddhas, who understand the twofold egolessness, discard the twofold hindrance, keep themselves away from the two forms of death, and from the two classes of evil desires. Whether they be sravakas or pratyekabuddhas, they are equally tathagatas if they thus qualify themselves, and in this respect, the Buddha says that he teaches only one vehicle impartially carrying all classes of sentient beings. The twofold hindrance to the realization of the inmost truth is the hindrance of evil desires and the hindrance of knowledge. We may say, the cognitive hindrance and the intellectual hindrance. The two kinds of death are death of discontinuity, and death of mysterious transformation. The first is that which takes place on a corporal plane, and the second is a form of subtle transformation proceeding in the consciousness of a higher being. By the two kinds of evil desires are meant, those that are stirred in us by the agency of ignorance, and those that follow from this fundamental evil. One of the significant teachings of the Lankavatara concerning the discourse of the Tathagata on the truth of Buddhism is its insistence on the distinction between the truth itself and an exposition of it. This follows from the Mahayanistic attitude toward the use of language in Buddhism, which is this, that meaning is to be separated from words, for the latter by no means exhaust the former and their